Welcome back to Founders in the Field, the show where I go behind the scenes with agency leaders, consultants, and creative founders to show you how they're building, scaling, and staying sane in the trenches. I'm your host, Stefan Bradley, and today's guest is Bradley Skaggs, co-founder and creative director of Skaggs. How you doing, Bradley?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Let's dive straight in. For people who don't know your story, take us right back to the start of your journey and what made you start your own business, and give us an overview of what your role looks like today inside Skaggs.
I'll try to make it short. We started the agency back in San Francisco. My partner and I were both architects actually. She went back to school and got her MFA, and in the process of doing that, she was freelancing and finished her MFA. And there was enough work that the agency started. In the meantime, I was doing a lot of work because 3D CAD was sort of becoming a thing, and I was doing a lot of sort of virtual reality work very early on, and we wrote a grant to do a project for NASA, which was a tour of all 10 facilities in the US and create a web experience out of it. And this is back when QuickTime VR was just sort of a new thing. And that project became all encompassing. So I took a sabbatical from being an architect and sort of joined her. And I never went back actually. And the agency formed. Back in those days, we were probably more of a graphic design shop than anything else, and then slowly grew into being more of a full service agency. And today, we've kind of gone back to being more of the roots of a studio, just because of post pandemic. It's just everybody's distributed anyhow. It's just easier to sort of work with a bunch of different people around the world as opposed to a large team sitting in your office, right? So the agency model is still there in terms of helping brands do everything. We just sort of distribute it now a bit more. But after NASA, we were doing a lot of work in San Francisco. We opened our office in New York in 2000, and that really got us more into the beauty space. Starting with Diptyque and fragrance, we did the first e-com site, and then Charlotte Tilbury, we launched her in the US and did her first e-com site and did her global digital for 5, 6 years. And it would have really put us in the beauty space, and that's where we've been ever since. So
What does your role look like today, like inside the company from how it was
it's
before to
interesting. So
now?
we obviously, my partner, working with her, she's also my wife. We had to figure out very early on how we were going to create 2 lanes. And it worked out great actually, because she does more art direction. I do creative direction. Um, she's more back of the house. I'm front of the house. I do more client interaction. She runs the studio. So there's a very clear kind of break in it. But my role today is still running the agency with her, but I focus more on brand strategy and the creative direction side of things, and just client management. And she runs the design side of things. So it works out well.
So do you run
Um,
like ad
Not
campaigns and social
directly. Most
media
of
and
our
that type of
work
thing as well?
is with helping either startup brands or legacy brands uh, find their reason for being. Really, that's the strategy side of it. There's a lot of work into helping brands understand what their core truth is, and then how to articulate that to whatever audiences they're trying to reach. So a lot of it starts with brand strategy, gets into digital, the website, uh, email campaigns, all that sort of digital stuff. We do social strategy. We don't do social media directly. I think that's something the brand has to run because it's really a conversation between them and their audience. Um, but the creative side of it's still very big. We do a lot of packaging work. Um, that's a big piece, and it's also a really interesting thing that's happening right now, given where we are in this political climate and stuff. We can talk about that, but that's pretty much where the agency is right now.
So could you walk me through how you currently deliver for clients, like day to day? So when a client sort of comes in,
It
or you've had them for a
depends
while, what is
on
it
who the
like day
client
to
is
day
and what
that you're
we're
doing for
engaged to
them?
do. I find that a lot of times a brand will walk in and they have an idea what they need to do. They want this or that, the other thing. And a lot of times when you peel the onion back, you realize that their core truth isn't there, and what they have and what they're saying are two very completely different things. And it's the first step is getting those together so that what they need to have that thing which nobody else can take from them, the defensible truth, right? And if they have that and they understand that, then all the messaging naturally comes from that. And it's a lot easier to build a brand, a stronger brand, than when you're trying to work in the capacity of taking borrowed language that's out there from other brands and trying to be like other brands and things like this. So uh, if that's where it starts, then it might be okay. The first thing is let's get the brand essence worked out and figure out what this brand really is, and then usually the next step is the website because that still is the key sort of point of the core truth lives there, and then how that gets disseminated out to packaging or into just marketing communications or retail or whatever. So um, every client kind of runs through that same methodology. We started developing methodology years ago, and just recently, it's really sort of come together in a tight way. Um, where AI has a part to do with that, um, but I think there's just so much noise out there right now, and there's so many brands that are competing for the same set of eyes, and there's a lot of noise as a result. And I think the brands that succeed now are the ones that who understand who they are, and that's what they talk about. And they're not trying to be like other people. They're not trying to be like other brands. They're not trying to talk like another brand. They don't want to look like another brand. They really have something that's unique and identifiable, and that's what they have to push in order to stand out. And I think if you look at the strongest brands in the world, not just in beauty, but across the board, those are the ones you recognize. They have a gravity that pulls you back to them, right? So, and sometimes you can't explain why. It's something you feel maybe, but and it doesn't matter if it's a drink or a sport or a fashion brand or whatever. There's something in it that resonates with you. And that's because they're true to themselves.
That's when you know the branding's really on point,
Yeah.
isn't it? When you don't quite know why it's pulling you in, but it definitely is pulling you in. And going back to your sort of methodology, as you said, then when clients come in and they say that they want this, that, and the other, but you actually take it right back to the core of their voice of who they actually are and get that right, and then everything sort of flows from there, like the messaging and like even the packaging, what you said then. So it's kind of like on reversal. They're probably looking at the packaging first and being like, oh, this needs to be like this. We want it to look pretty and this, that, and the other. And you say, actually, no, let's take it right back to you, who you are as a brand. So
Yeah, and
get
in
the
all
branding
fairness, some of
correct,
them
and
have
then
it.
the
Some of
messaging
them
will
know exactly
flow, and
what they
then
are,
on
and
to the other
you
things.
can skip that first step, and you can move into the third step, which is the creative part. But some of them they don't, and you've got to start with that step two and understand really what the brand is about and what makes it special and unique and different. Um, so
So, like, typically, once they've got that part nailed down, what is like the first type of strategy that you normally go to in the sense of, what email? I know you mentioned other things, but what is like
there's not really
the
an
normal
answer,
sort of way you would approach
a
it?
direct answer to that, because again, it really depends on the brand and where they are in their growth. If they're a startup, it's very different than if they're a legacy brand that's been around for 25, 30 years, right? Or more. And even if they're a startup, if they've moved past a round of funding or two, um, and they have a team, that's a different dynamic than if it's the founder who's starting. I think a lot of brands get trapped in this idea of awareness versus authority, and awareness is important, but awareness without authority is just again more noise, because if you strip it away, to there's nothing there. If you build the authority around what makes it unique, okay, then you have something
Substance.
to go out and build awareness with. You can get influencers involved. You can run social campaigns. You can do. run email campaigns, because it's all going to go back to this core truth. And it's the same old thing, like how you learn anything in life, right? Is because it's by trial and you just keep practicing and practicing and practicing, and eventually you get it, and eventually you become a master at it. This idea that you can build a brand and people will come, that idea died years ago, and you'd be surprised how many people still feel like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to sell out tomorrow. And maybe they do. There are those unicorn brands that pop up and happen it, but that is not the norm. And I think there's a lot of people. It's good as in a degree that they've got that sort of motivation and inspiration to think they can do it. But the reality is it's a long slog, and it takes time, it takes money, and it takes a lot of patience and energy. So yeah.
No. Yeah, no, definitely, especially in, that moves me on to my next question, but especially in this era of AI, do you mean where
Hmm.
it's so much easier to get things
Yeah.
knocked out, like like websites and all these different things, where it was a lot harder before. So yeah, no,
Hmm.
definitely can see that. But like I say, it moves me on to my next question, whereas
So
in
we
your
have
business,
implemented it
where, if anywhere,
in a
have
couple
you
of different
implemented AI?
places. We call it actual intelligence, and it's a layer that runs sort of beneath the business. There's no reason that we should spend 2 or 3 weeks now doing research when we can have AI do it in, you know, a matter of hours. Better to do it that way and then spend that 2 or 3 weeks analyzing that data and proof checking it that it's correct and it makes sense and it's viable. And also, where does it lead to? Maybe it leads somewhere you've never expected to. So there's a lot you can do with it. But I think what happens is a lot of brands are like, oh, I'll just prompt ChatGPT for a brand strategy, and wow, here it is. Look at it, it's perfect. Problem is, it just gave me the result of what the same guy did 2 weeks ago because it's looking for pattern recognition across the board. And it's looking at the common denominator, which is down here. It's not up here and it's not unique. So I think you have to look at AI as a tool, no different than a photographer looks at Photoshop as a tool, right? It doesn't make him a better photographer. He still has to have the right eye looking through the camera with the right lighting and everything else to make the photo beautiful. But Photoshop can definitely save him a lot of time in post production. So I think that's where AI plays a role in this. So for us, it is there as this sort of foundational layer. Um, we do use it for what it does not. We don't use it for is creative. So that's the part that's strictly human. However, it's kind of like the sum is greater than the parts. If you put AI together with 20 plus years of experience in the industry, there's some real value in that. Um, and I would just caution everybody that AI largely will tell you what you want to hear. Um, you got to learn how to negatively prompt it too, and have it be critical because it won't do that by default. At least in my experience, right? So I've had clients who like come in like, look, we don't need to worry about the brand strategy part because we've got it figured out right now. And you read it and it's like, you know what? I'm going to take that same strategy, give me the prompt. I'm going to prompt it for, let's say it was a fragrance brand. I'm going to prompt it for a skincare brand. And guess what happens? It comes out almost exactly the same. So they're not getting ahead. It's one of those illusions where it appears that you've made progress. But again, you've got to be able to go back and look at it. And I think there's a similar thing now with what's happening with like Claude, you know, introduced this design thing a couple weeks ago. Okay, great. However, if you are not a designer and understand what makes great design and how typography works and what readability is and things like this, Claude's not going to solve that for you. It's going to give you exactly what you asked for. So again, you still need to have, I think, the eye and the experience to understand and analyze what it's putting back to you.
I think using it for
Uh-huh.
like research, reporting, proposals, audits, all these types of things, like almost like the grunt work. I think that's where
That's
AI
exactly it.
really excels. Do you know what I mean? Because it enables you then to spend more time on what you're good at. Do you mean on what humans are good at? Whether that's relationships, strategy, things like that. I don't, like you said, I don't think it's nowhere near on default as good with strategic things. Although when you put in, like you
Hmm.
just said, then 20 years of knowledge, whatever that industry that is, then it's going to give you much better outputs, of course, because it's
Exactly.
not pulling from that same pool of knowledge as the person next door who's prompting it exactly the same as you is prompted. It's pulling from a knowledge base that you've sort of fed it as well. Do you know what I mean? So you definitely will get better, you know, outputs from that. But I feel like any business, if there were any, yeah, businesses should be trying to, you know, if they're implementing AI, it should be implementing it around the core things as what we said earlier, like, you know, reporting, research, proposals, audits, all these types of
Yeah,
things, because then it'll free you up to have way more time to actually be a better version of you. Do you know what I mean? To actually think about strategy. Because if you think about any business owner that has a skill, which, you know, for example, if it's marketing, then it's strategy, things like that. If you're spending, you know, 10 hours a week doing reports for all different clients and plus, you know, all these other things, then you've only got a finite amount of time then to actually
that's
focus on
exactly it.
doing the thing that you're really
And as
good
you
at.
know, I
If you
think
can
from
take
your own
away that
experience,
time and
right, the
focus
better
more
the
time on
input,
that,
the
you're only
better
going
the
to get better.
output. So this idea of writing a single sentence prompt never works. You know, you've again, you've got to think about it first as the human and like what you're really trying to achieve in order to tell the machine what to do with it, right? It's not going to think for you. And it's not going to tell you something that hasn't been said before, right? So you've got to like you really got to think about what you're trying to do
Yeah,
strategically
exactly.
before you even sit down in front of it, I think. So, yeah. Uh-huh.
No, 100%. Like being able to articulate yourself really well to it is a skill on its own. Do you know what I mean? Because, like you said, it's going to make
Exactly.
assumptions. It's going to, you know, it's going to think, try and fill the gaps where
Exactly.
you have not
Yeah.
filled it. Do you know what I mean? And it's only going to
But
do
that all
that.
said,
It's not
it's
going to, you
super
can't read
cool
your
tech,
mind,
and
can
I'm
it?
glad it exists. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And while
So,
it
Bradley,
does, I think, wreak a bit of havoc in this industry I'm in, I think those who embrace it, understand it, and try to leverage it are gonna be okay. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
average being the key word there, I think. So, Bradley,
Um,
what is working well
this
and
world
where
I'm
do
in
you
is
feel
always a
slight
little.
friction
There's
in
always
business?
friction. Economy has a lot to do with it. Manufacturing has a lot to do with it. I'm talking specifically about beauty, and specifically when it comes to packaging, right? So we live in this world now with this upside down idea of tariffs and things like this, and while the tariffs are one problem, I think all the indecision around it and uncertainty around it is the bigger problem. Um, because people, they just don't know if they should commit or not. So if you are sourcing, let's say, package component from China, and it's a 2 cent line item, and suddenly it's 10 cents, that makes a massive change to the bottom line, and what happens. And now with what's happening in Iran and the cost of fuel, the cost of shipping is going through the roof. Uh, it's causing a lot of problems, not just as the for the studio and what we do, but I think for every brand we work with, um, because the costs are nuts right now, and that's a huge amount of friction. I think AI has played a little bit of friction, not, I mean, in both ways actually, for us and for the brands, like we spoke about. Um, and I don't know what's going to happen with it, obviously, but it is a huge point of friction.
And I suppose when you're talking about, you know, like the tariffs and the fuel, is
Well,
it like
inflation's
less
going
money
up,
that the
consumer
brands are
spending is
making,
going
so
down,
then
the
they might
costs are
pull the
rising
marketing
across the
budget and
board.
things like
Every
that?
brand is raising their prices and stuff because their packaging has gotten more expensive. So their margins are getting cut, and we the consumers end up paying for that. And not only that, we're paying the tariff tax, no matter what people want to say about it. We are. Um, and so I think it's the combination of all those things that just, I think launching a brand today is a very difficult thing. Um, More so than it was, either in the pandemic or even quote post pandemic, right? Um, at least then, we understood what the problem was and that there was a way maybe to get around it. And with this one, who knows what he's going to do next, right? It's insane. So I guess time will tell.
It's uncertain times. Yeah, uncertain times, definitely. Like you say, at least
Hmm.
with the pandemic, you kind of was. We didn't know exactly when it was going to end, but we was
Yeah.
hoping it can't
Or
last too long. Do you know
what's
what I
going to
mean? Really,
happen
with
next? What other
things
crazy,
you've just mentioned,
stupid
then
thing is going to
you
happen, right?
don't know
That
how long
doesn't
these are
need to
going to
happen.
last.
So it's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah. Mm.
Sure. Okay.
Bradley, I got two more questions for you, so I won't keep you too much longer. Where do
Um,
you want to be in
yeah, I
terms of
guess at the most
business? Where do you
fundamental
want to be in
level,
terms of business in the next
in
12 to 18
business,
months?
not that we're not going to be in business, but you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of, like we were just talking about, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think a lot of people are rethinking what they want to do. Um, I've been doing this for a lot of time, a lot of years. I love doing it, but I too am a little bit interested in maybe looking at doing other things. So I don't really have an answer to that. I know what I want. I just want to keep doing great work, but I don't know right now in what form that's going to take. So we'll just have to see where things go.
So my last question, Bradley, is if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in your business or in the business, what would it be and why?
That's a really tough question, actually. Uh, there's not there's not a lot of things that are really wrong with it, I guess, in a sense. It's if there's one thing I wish I could do is just business development be a lot easier, but that's that's always going to be a challenge. Um, I think just having people come to us who who really want to do something different, who are willing to make the tough decisions and take the risk to follow their what they have and to make it special and to keep it that way and not fall into the commodity trap of doing what everybody else does. I think that would be a really nice thing. And it's not that people don't. It's just that the majority of them. I think a lot of people know what they want, but they're not what they need, and the other ones know what they need, but not what they want. So it's figuring that out first, and then usually things fall into place if you know what you're doing and you have a process. So yeah, thank you.
Bradley, thank you so much for coming on. I've loved our conversation, and yeah,
You can find
thank you
us
for
on
sharing your insight.
skaggs.co.
Where can my viewers and
You can
listeners,
also
where
find
can
me
my
on
viewers and
LinkedIn
listeners
at
reach out to you if
slash
they're
Bradley
wanting to work with you?
Skaggs. Um, and you can also call us. Numbers on the website. So that's where.
That's it, everybody. That's where you can reach out to Bradley. And again, Bradley, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on. And my viewers and listeners, please like, comment, subscribe, send to a friend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Bradley.